Mass celebrated now everywhere expressly in order that priests face congregation rather than both facing the east, into which the Lord has gone and from which we wait his return, has become now a closed circle, often enough without any reference to Christ or his ascension, without reference to heaven. In fact, it happens not infrequently without any particular interest in God as such. Here, from La Mia Vita, are Pope Benedict's observations on this aberration. In the end, every community wants to be given its own liturgy. But when the liturgy is something that everyone makes by himself, then it no longer gives us that which is its true quality, an encounter with mystery, which is not our product, but the origin and source of our very life. Dramatically urgent for the life of the Church is a renewal of the liturgical conscience, a liturgical reconciliation that turns to knowing again the unity of the history of the liturgy and divine faith. He says, I am convinced that the ecclesial crisis in which we find ourselves today depends in a very great part on the collapse of the liturgy, which sometimes is even conceived et si Deus non daretur, as if it were no longer important whether God were there in it, whether he speaks to us and hears us. But if in the liturgy there no longer appears the communion in faith, the universal unity of the Church, of its history, the mystery of the living Christ, where is it that the Church still appears in her spiritual substance? Then the community celebrates only itself, without which faith, Church, Christ, it's not worth the effort. And given that the community in itself does not have subsistence, but as to unity has its origin in faith to the Lord himself, it becomes inevitable in these conditions that there arrive a dissolution into parts of every sort, at factional counterpoint, in a church which is lacerating itself. Because of this, we need a new liturgical movement. Beloved, a new liturgical movement is not the discovery of old rubrics, but a rediscovery of the liturgy from within, the dynamic of that encounter in sacrament with Jesus Christ, him crucified, risen, and ascended into glory. A new liturgical movement is a powerful return to the ascetic practices of our forefathers, a complete reordering of lives to the reality that Christ is God, and he reigns in me and in you. Beloved, the kind of celebration the Pope just described is not worth the effort, because it represents a grave form of self-deception in the spiritual order. This is an ascetic principle which receives endless attention in the Russian Orthodox monastic world. A deep self-searching to make sure that I am not deceived by the evil one. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who doeth the will of my Father. This other is an ontological perversion, turning away of the divine finality of our Catholic worship. What is really needed, is a profound reawakening to the sense of the supernatural of God penetrating this world, Yorba Linda, 2010, on May 12th. That reason for which we have been created, our cosmic purpose in God, that one end to which we are directed by God's creative and redemptive will. This mystery of the Ascension draws us, among so many things, to consider the divine origin of our human constitution and the purpose for which it has been given to us at all. We too, then, must stand with those men of Galilee, looking into the heavens, looking into that east, certainly not looking at one another, and together awaiting with ardent longing this Lord, our God's return. And why? Because man has been made by God for God. Man is only true to himself when he adores and obeys God. By doing so, this creature, man, reveals his truest purpose and performs his primary function in a broken world beset by so many problems. Christ, heaven, God, glory. We are made for these and nothing else. Beloved, the primary reason for human life always remains relative to the supernatural order, that realm of uncreated goodness into which Jesus Christ, Son of Mary and flesh of our flesh, has now penetrated. In so doing, he has taken human nature there as well, in him, elevated and seated at God's right hand in glory. What an astounding reality! What a condescension beyond all measure. Our God has destined us to share eternity with him as we are in our flesh, but redeemed and glorified. We must not allow the idea of the supernatural to be banalized, as is clearly the case with so much that is passed off now as Catholic. Nor is